Just know that I'm live proof if anyone out there has a dream that they are realized. I owe the Academy a huge debt of gratitude for this. And this is for you, Daddy. Kim Basinger, the individual who formerly the Playboy muse, the seductive Bond girl, and the epitome of sensuality in 912 captivated the entire world of weeks, and the honored Oscar statuette recipient. However, that was merely the luminous radiance of a past time. Beneath the perfect beauty and crystal blue eyes was a shattered soul tormented by the apprehension over her own presence. She once sparked intense debate for starring in the seductive psychological movie 912 Weeks. The Globe was shocked by the performance. Following that, there was a terrifying divorce from Alec Baldwin, and a 7-year one of the most acrimonious and expensive court battles in Hollywood throughout the 2000s was over custody of their daughter. Additionally, when she later, thinking she was defending her creative conscience, she pulled out of a movie she thought was too dark. She was sued, convicted of acting in dishonest faith, and mandated to pay penalties of about $9 million. The blow left Hollywood abandoning Kim Basinger, bankrupted her, and ruined her reputation. At 71 years old, the woman who was once admired by everyone on the earth now lives in seclusion, away from cameras and the outside world, from the biggest star in Hollywood to a recluse lost in the shadows. Something depressed her. And to comprehend why a representation of freedom and beauty was, we have to go back to her early years, since she was overcome with a crippling fear of life itself, where tragedy's seeds were originally planted. The birth of Camila and Basinger on December 8, 1953, in the quiet, sunny town of Athens, Georgia, where old tall trees cast shadows across the crammed wooden dwellings. She was the third of 5 siblings who lived in a small house with a tin roof that shook during rainy seasons. During chilly winter evenings, all the while her father's jazz played softly, children snuggled close on a sagging bed to be warm. A performer who, drifting in the air like his silent method of concealing grief, he had dreamed of the theater. He was employed as a creditor to manager during the day and a musician at night, and her mother, a stunning woman who had formerly worked as a professional swimmer and model dancer, had long since stepped away from the limelight to relocate inside the tiny kitchen's boundaries. Kim was raised in the between of two conflicting worlds, the glitzy recollections of her parents' past and the exhausting present-off bills that have not been paid. In a household where people laugh but don't understand, early on, the blonde girl with the deep blue eyes learned to keep quiet. She was so shy in school that when her name was called, she was unable to raise her head. She was made fun of by her classmates for having a whispery voice, and whenever she had to speak in front of others, she shuddered till she was gasping for air. Kim once recited a poem out loud, instantly passed out. For Kim, it was the fear of being seen. Although the doctor said it was just nerves, she would live the rest of her life in fear. Her parents made every effort. They enrolled her in acting and dancing courses in the hopes that movement and music would help her come out of her shell. Kim would, however, only squeeze her lips together while holding extremely cold hands, even during brief performances. Then, in 1971, nobody in her family thought she would have the guts to compete in the Miss Athens Teen Beauty pageant that entered the stage. However, that evening, with the crowd cheering and the lights shining brightly, the shy girl who had once feared standing up, grinning, and singing without shivering while being watched, she only cared about finishing her song without passing out, not about winning. Something changed that night. She realized that the light shining on her was a strangely liberated sensation. Freedom, not fear. I didn't care about the crown, Kim remembered years later. I simply wanted to see my father's eyes when he believed I believe it's the true reason I became an actress, someone on that stage. She began modeling on her own after the pageant and was quickly signed by the Ford modeling agency. Kim went from being a quiet little child to being featured on magazine covers wearing fancy dresses while residing in New York, the city that never sleeps. But despite the glitz and the flashbulbs, she was still confused that I felt like a doll that was on exhibit for people to evaluate. Once, she stated, every contract required her to alter herself to fit someone, and the photo session was a challenge to person's definition of beauty. After a few years, Kim stopped modeling and relocated from New York to Los Angeles and started over. She attended the William Esper School to study acting. Studio, where pupils learnt to feel rather than just pose. She practiced late into the night in her small apartment. Night. I truly laughed and cried. Not only that, but she was an image on the cover of a magazine, but a real, breathing person. From her cinematic career flourished there. She made an appearance in Playboy in 1981, not top-provoke, but as a statement, I'm entitled to be recognized for more than just my beauty. Hollywood filmmakers took notice of the photo shoot. 2 years later, in the 1983 film Never Say Never Again, Kim transformed into a Bond girl. Together with Sean Connery, formally ascending to the pinnacles of celebrity. However, behind the brightness, the young woman who she once passed out from fear of being observed, yet she never really felt that she belonged in Hollywood, the realm of fies that she had always feared. Kim Basinger astounded everyone in 1986 at Hollywood when she agreed to play the lead in 912 Weeks, a bold, sensual psychological drama that examined a dominant submissive relationship between Elizabeth, portrayed by Kim Basinger, and Mickey Rourke's character John. This wasn't a romantic Hollywood tale. The food games, the bathroom sex, and the blindfolds were all captured on camera, brutal, icy accuracy that seldom allows for tenderness. The movie explored a woman's gradual loss of control in addition to desire over her own body and feelings in a poisonous relationship. During the 1980s, when feminism was rapidly gaining traction, 9 Weeks became a divisive cultural emblem. Some saw it as a form of artistic freedom, of sexual behavior. Others viewed it as exploitative and retrograde, the female body for the enjoyment of men. Prior to its premiere, the movie encountered fights against censorship. It received an R rating in the US and came perilously to an X rating, which is pornographic. In the UK, Canada, and a number of Asian nations, numerous scenes were either completely prohibited or severely edited. It was deemed vulgar and unethical by some American theaters, who declined to show it. Because it was deemed too dark, the film failed at the US box office. Chile. Ironically, though, across Europe, particularly in France, Italy, and Germany, the movie was hailed as a sensual, cinematic, poetic masterpiece. It was dubbed the nakedness of the soul, and 9 to 12 Weeks quickly became to fame as a cult favorite, greatly impacting the erotic cinematic language for many years to come. However, Kim paid a terrible price. As stunning as it was hazardous, the movie made her the sex bomb of the 1980s. Hollywood started to view her in a different light. One by one, the doors to serious parts closed. Point 1. She found herself ensnared in the picture of a seductive icon. Her beauty turned into both a strength and a weakness. After several years, I don't regret it, but I gave up something huge because of that, Kim acknowledged. Movie. In 1989, 3 years later, she broke that stigma with a courageous career choice as journalist Vicky Vale in Tim Burton's Batman, starring Jack and Michael Keaton Nicholson. The movie became a cultural sensation after earning over $400 million worldwide and made Kim one of Hollywood's biggest stars again. For the first time, viewers viewed her as a real person rather than just a sexual icon, a fascinating performer. However, Kim's portrayal of Lynn, almost 10 years later, marked the pinnacle of her artistic career. In 1997, Bracken appeared in L.A. Confidential. Lynn, a sophisticated call girl with traditional despite her beauty and melancholic charm, she was a lonely and tragic figure. The part was subtle, subdued, and eerie, representing a whole metamorphosis. The Academy Award went to Kim Basinger in addition to the Golden Globe and SAG Award, the award for Best Supporting Actress, demonstrating for all time that she was much more than simply a pretty face. She truly has a gift. As the attention faded, Kim took a more subdued route. She starred in the 2002 film 8 Mile, as in sharp contrast to her glitzy background. She is now a struggling single mother. In 2004, she portrayed a woman who was engrossed in silent dejection and thereafter dazzled viewers once more in Cellular 2004 and a number of other action films. From a model whose skills were once questioned to an actress who won an Oscar, Kim to become one, Basinger had to endure discrimination, condemnation, and even crippling terror. Point one of the most iconic figures in Hollywood. However, when not in front of the camera, Kim was no longer in charge of her own story. Her private life started to fall apart, more brittle, entangled, and difficult to manage than any part she had ever performed. Prior to becoming famous, Kim Basinger had a short relationships with football player Joe Namath, photographer Dale Robinette, and model Tim Saunders. These connections left only one truth in the public domain. Kim was really sentimental, and she withdraws inside herself just as quickly. While filming Hard Country in 1980, Kim met Ron Sunder, a makeup artist who would eventually become her husband, for almost 8 years. Ron stood by her side during the early years of her acting career, taking care of her while she found it difficult to adapt to life in the spotlight. Kim received a diagnosis of agoraphobia that same year, which is a severe dread of open or crowded areas following a panic episode in a supermarket. She was restricted to her house for 6 months and didn't go out in public. Ron gave up his work to care for her at home, even formally changing his last name to Britton at Kim's request. It decided on a last name that starts with the letter B in order to keep her recognizable initials in the entertainment sector. Their marriage appeared harmonious at first, but by the middle of the 1980s, there were fissures in it started to show up. In Ron's 1998 autobiography, Longer, he learned that Kim was having an affair with Richard Gere, her co-star in the film, in 1986, in Oh Mercy. Upon discovering handwritten correspondence between the two, Ron discreetly claimed to have seen his wife and his partner sharing a kiss while following them to a restaurant. The couple didn't split up right away, but their differences grew until 1989, when they got a formal divorce before the Christmas. Kim consented to give her former husband $9,000 to alimony each month for 8 years. In a sector already brimming with, she opted for silence in the face of personal catastrophes, providing neither explanation nor denial that Kim's response to a question concerning her first marriage was only once. "It was a part of my life, not the happiest part, but one I can't get rid of." Kim appeared to be emotionally lost after her marriage ended, launching her into a string of short-lived yet passionate partnerships. Among the most widely discussed was her liaison with John Peters, producer of Batman. Peters recounted in an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, "Kim was in an abusive marriage at the time, and I witnessed it happen with my Aunies, and I intervened to keep her safe. We became friends after that, and later romantic partners." Peters publicly disclosed his conflict with Michael Keaton, Kim's co-star in Batman. "Michael was pushed away. I was just a kid, and he was Batman, a hairdresser with a knack for interacting with ladies. However, Kim and I shared a residence on the set. She even assisted me in writing the script's third act following the hectic time with John Peters." Kim Basinger later dated guys from a wide range of backgrounds, such as Prince, the musical prodigy and cultural icon that cannot be replaced. Considering their special bond, Kim expressed her longing to the Daily Beast following Prince's passing in 2016 that "I had no boundaries at all, I admit. I made the most of that period of time. It was a heartfelt, lovely, memorable experience full with enduring memories. I didn't place boundaries on myself, that's what we'll call it." In addition to Prince, she dated fitness instructor Alexio Gander and fashion designer Phil Walsh, a trainer. So far, none of these relationships have endured. Each was used into Kim Basinger's road towards self-renewal and liberation following her childhood heartbreaks. She never really found a partner until Alec Baldwin showed up. They first connected in 1990 while filming The Getting Married to a Man. Alec Young was like a storm, intelligent, endearing, and completely unexpected at shattering the protective barrier Kim had put up around herself. She thought she had at last found a man mature enough to be a parent by her side, strong enough to defend her, and warm enough to soothe her injuries. In 1995, they welcomed their daughter, Ireland, into the world after getting married 3 years later without a prenuptial agreement. Everything appeared to be a fairy tale at first, but Alex's blazing anger quickly conflicted with Kim's delicate emotional state. Having struggled with psychological, she battled to restore equilibrium after years of suffering, and the marriage gradually started to fall apart. Kim Basinger filed in 2001 for a divorce. However, that was just the start of the bitterest and darkest era in her life. Their only child, Ireland, was the subject of a custody dispute that turned into a vicious 7-year legal battle that cost about $3 million in legal costs, and leaving behind psychological wounds that would never completely go away. Alec Baldwin's phone contact with his daughter was restricted by the court, and he was required to attend anger management sessions 90 minutes per day. Kim was then expected to submit weekly email reports outlining each component of Ireland's operations. What started out as a marriage turned into active surveillance between a mother under scrutiny and a father under restriction. When a voicemail from Alec Baldwin was released in 2007, everything went haywire and dispersed throughout the United States. He spoke to his 11-year-old daughter as a disrespectful, careless person while he was furious at Small Pig since she didn't pick up when he called. The country was startled. The press went crazy. Kim said nothing. Alex snapped. And there stood in the storm's eye a little girl who didn't understand what it meant to be held responsible for the suffering of adults. Alec expressed regret in public, adding, "It battled valiantly to become a father, but occasionally in despair. I ruined the same thing I'm attempting to safeguard." Despite the pain, Ireland stood up for him. He was furious when he stated that. "I simply said, 'Okay, Dad, whatever,' to him." She uploaded a picture of herself clutching the children's book, If I Were a Pig, with the right hand, years later as an adult. Kim, however, felt that pain. Caption, "Of course, I'd be a rude, thoughtless little pig, never fully recovered." She almost disappeared from public life following the divorce, withdrawing behind closed doors. "Divorce always hurts the child, no matter what your reasons are," she once said. Stated. But ours, it was a real nightmare. Crowds, cameras, and even the sound of an unexpected knock on the door made her frightened. For several months, she had to abandon her home to live in solitude with her plants, pets, and silence, like she was running away from her own life. Upon regaining her serenity, Kim instinctively decided to become a mother. "If my kid wanted to grow up surrounded by love and light rather than fear, I wanted to give her the freedom to paint on the walls." And Kim's bulwark in the Tempest was Ireland, a model actress and her mother's confidant. In A, the two reflected on their past for the first time in Ireland in an emotional Red Table Talk episode and said something that made millions cry. "My mom and I have always had a wonderful relationship. The only one who never lets go of me is her." Maybe Kim was saved by that quiet, unwavering love, the Basinger from the depths. However, the storms had not yet passed. After rising from the ashes of her marriage, she was struck again shortly after, this time by her own professional decisions. In 1991, when Batman's radiance was still bright and the shadow of 9/11 with 2 weeks still etched on magazine covers, Kim Basinger found herself in a difficult situation. Fame at its height was on one side. Conversely, the indie movie Boxing strange, surreal, and quite unsettling is Helena. The movie recounted the tale of a physician becomes so enamored with a woman who rejects him that he abducts her and amputates her limbs in the name of affection. David Lynch's daughter, director Jennifer Lynch, characterized it as a metaphor for modern love's loneliness and possession. Kim nodded simply, agreeing to star. No legally enforceable agreement. Only a verbal commitment given during a preliminary meeting. Funding was obtained just by her name. And the Boxing Helena was praised by the press as the daring creative move that could change Kim from sex icon to one of her generation's most admired actors. Kim, however, was appalled when the finished draft was delivered. The violent sequences both made her realize that everything she had created could be destroyed by the role, both physically and emotionally. She made the decision to leave. Nobody could have foreseen the consequences. Mainline Images. The production she was sued by the corporation for allegedly breaking a verbal agreement, claiming that she destroyed the entire project and cost hundreds of crew members employment. The case was framed as a battle by the media, which flocked to it, between a movie celebrity and the ethical standards of Hollywood. In the course of the trial, the star cannot just be beautiful and famous, the plaintiff's attorney said. They have to be accountable for what they say. The court decided against them in 1993. Kim ordered her to pay $8.9 million in damages, which at the time was a huge amount. The media referred to it as the verdict that rocked Hollywood, with headlines screaming, "Kim from sex icon to sinner," Basinger's attorney sadly stated. The jury does not despise errors. They despise excellence. And Kim is the epitome of that. The impact crushed her whole being. Kim filed for bankruptcy in 1993, sold her stocks, and her home disappeared from Hollywood. Previously, directors battled to cast her, they turned away. One-side adolescent magazines have categorized her under celebrities who damaged their own professions. Kim turned into a warning about the consequences of disobeying the system. Her reputation had already vanished, even though she eventually struck an out-of-court settlement and the damages were decreased out of thin air. From financial disaster to Oscar glory, from the most coveted Bond girl to a deceased celebrity, Kim Basinger discovered a harsh reality in Hollywood. The light can be permanently extinguished by one poor decision. Ironically, a terrible memory from the past reappeared just when it appeared that the past had been forgotten. 912-week period. The movie that earned her a worldwide celebrity had left unseen scars as well. Later, she admitted, "It was the most horrifying event of my life." Because Kim discovered, once the cameras stopped, that she had given up her sense of security and her belief in people, and she no longer possessed the innocence of an actress. In Kim Basinger previously admitted in a New York Times interview, "After that, I didn't want to ever see anyone I had worked with again once the movie concluded. If I saw, he would murder the man who served me coffee." It seemed like a sinister joke, but in actuality, it was her method of explaining a traumatic event that never completely recovered from the psychological damage caused by 912 weeks. Director Adrian Lyne and co-star Mickey Rourke made a conscious effort to control Kim's feelings, making her endure a life of terror and stress to record real-life responses. She was not allowed to talk to Rourke. Camera, isolated, and designed to maintain a feeling of vulnerability and fear over the course of the 10-week shoot. She was once called an instinctive actress by Lyne. She reacts rather than acts. However, in order to arrive to that fact, he had no reservations about telling Roar to hold her until she shouted, sobbed, or was ever given a real slap. Kim initially turned down the role, particularly following Ash was asked to impersonate a prostitute pleading for money in a sexual game during a grueling audition. However, a few days she eventually gave up after receiving 24 red roses from Lyne and Roar. They seemed to genuinely believe in what they were doing. When she later commented, "I didn't know the price I'd pay would be my own soul." Kim stumbled on the steps during a scene in Manhattan with fake rain, leaving her arm with a real scar, the apparent indication of an invisible injury. Even worse, after the shoot was over, she didn't no longer recognize her. "I was totally lost that I detested Mickey. I was terrified of him. I then gave him a piss. I didn't know which emotions belonged to the character and which were mine." 3 years later, she claimed, her marriage fell apart. To make matters worse, the man who had driven her to the limit publicly discredited her as an actress with no depth, who only responds, who doesn't read. Kim didn't answer. She did not defend herself, not because she had forgotten, but more because she didn't want to relive that horror. Not until 26 years later did she watch Mickey Roar on the Black November set once more. The terror had subsided by then, but like a razor pierced deep into her heart, remembrance persisted. That has more experience more than any legal action or financial collapse helped Kim realize how vulnerable women are in the film industry, where real emotional suffering is occasionally sacrificed in order to elicit truthful performances. She may have discovered a new purpose to defend the voiceless as a result of that suffering. Kim developed into an ardent supporter of women's safety and entertainment, animal rights, and anyone who ever in the name of art silenced. Beginning in the early 2000s, she came back to the screen in parts that represented this change. Mature, reflective, and devoid of glamour. She changed from being the sex symbol to the survivor. Her performances become more subdued, more powerful, but much steadier. However, after 2010, Kim Basinger drifted slowly into silence. She made a fleeting appearance in the 2017 film 50 Shades Darker. It's a discreet homage to her background, not a claim to fame. Kim now leads a secluded, tranquil existence. No scandals, no red carpets, no social media. She spends the majority of her time with her, does voice work, takes care of her garden, tends to her horses, and writes children's books. Ireland, my daughter, once remarked, "My mother just wants to live. She doesn't need the world to remember her." Truthfully, there are aches that haunt individuals for a lifetime and beauties that make them hold their breath. Basinger, Kim strangely embodies both of them. In the 80s and 90s, she was etched in millions of people's memories. Those sad eyes, that perfect face concealing an unidentified melancholy and a sensuality that was so organic it didn't need toe work. However, if you believe that she was just a Hollywood sex bomb, You've overlooked the most crucial detail. A woman was behind those seductive eyes that who used to be afraid of the actual camera lens. A woman who dared to appear in court turned down a movie that might have ruined her. An unmarried mother who battled not only to keep herself safe, but also to safeguard her child. Just a human, no publicity, no antics, possessing the bravery to live truthfully in an illusion-based environment. Kim Basinger never sought notoriety. She left the limelight behind in quiet that left a vacuum that no one has ever filled, yet did not say goodbye. She didn't give the world glamour, but honor, not fame, but tenacity. And maybe thus, despite her almost complete absence from the screen, Kim Basinger continues to be one of Hollywood's names that people remember. She has nearly disappeared from the cacophony of Hollywood these days in flashing cameras, glossy publications, or red carpets only silence, integrity, and the subdued elegance of a woman who has at last made content with her own image. She decided to live a peaceful life next to her longtime. She has been dating Mitch Stone, a famous hairstylist, since 2014. They remain out of the spotlight, only infrequently captured holding hands and grinning subtly in Malibu's golden light. Some claim to be engaged. However, a Kim love doesn't have to be declared. All you have to do is live it gently, slowly, much like breathing. Kim withdrew from the bright lights of celebrity to the serene radiance of dusk behind the scenes, deciding that Hawaii would be her haven following years of fatigue, but she never really vanished. She made a silent but significant statement in 2022 reappearance in Peter's short art film Flux, which was distributed as an N.F. Bogdanovich's elegant goodbye whisper, which concludes her cinematic adventure in Thane the most autonomous and free manner conceivable. In 2023, a year later, when she showed up for her granddaughter's baby shower, the Irish daughter, she brought her admirers to tears. Baldwin, whose first child was on the way. Kim appeared calm and uncomplicated in the picture that went popular online. Her grin was sweet and gentle as she held Mitch Stone's hand. Thousands of comments flooded in beneath the post. "Your mother is great." So Kim later posted an ultrasound photo from Ireland's own 27-year pregnancy, saying she was glad to see her at peace. Earlier, as though completing the ideal circle of parenting, Kim Basinger is still dedicated to her commitment to life preservation. A lifelong vegetarian, she collaborates with groups that consistently promote animal rights, such as PETA Farm Sanctuary and Last Chance for Animals Welfare Regulations, and opposing the sale of dog meat. When Jakarta formally dogs are not food, she tweeted, referring to the 2023 ban on dog meat, "It's time for the world to take notice that they are buddies." Kim has made the decision to live quietly and gracefully in a society when celebrity is frequently determined by loudness. She doesn't require praise, only the ability to be herself. Her present wealth is $20 million is said to be sufficient for a basic lifestyle that is not characterized by luxury, but through empathy and the ability to let go. Kim Basinger is no longer she, is merely a lady who has lived completely fallen, profoundly risen again, and at this point is no longer Hollywood's inspiration. Kim doesn't need to go back to be remembered since it is her wounds, her silences, and the way she last found peace that overcame them, which makes her unique. How about you? When you reflect on her path, through what aspect of Kim Basinger remains? Fear and resiliency, light and shadow. You the longest. Is it her bravery to live authentically, her beauty, or her suffering? Please leave a comment below with your ideas. And remember to follow the channel because, following Kim Basinger, there are still a lot of stories to tell about other Hollywood souls where grief and beauty coexist forever, hand as if they were two faces in one dream.